you? What about you? You're all very, very welcome. It is Sunday, the 8th of March, because we seem to be heading, or at least appear to be heading, into a third world war. But before I talk about that minor issue, I'd like to start off by having a wee chat about Donald Trump's most recent attempt to distract from the Epstein papers. Now, his most recent one has been during the week where he dragged the Clintons, Hilary and Bill, in front of a House Oversight Committee in Washington. Now, the Trump administration, they continue to do everything in their power to put clear blue water between the Donald and Epstein. Even though the two of them had decades-long friendship, there's thousands of pictures of them partying, and Trump's name is very prominent in the Epstein papers, even the ones that he's allowed to be released. He's got half of them he's holding back and refuses to release. Right? Now, the depositions of both Bill and Hilary in front of the House committee were another failed attempt, and it was an escapade to try to distract from Trump's friendship with Epstein. Now, they only got them there, they only got the Clintons there when they threatened them with contempt of Congress if they didn't appear. But the deposition of Hilary, she was even more dramatic than that of husband Bill, because they were all sort of waiting for Bill to get caught in the headlights. But Hilary, she put the boot in early. You know what I mean? The fact that Hillary Clinton had never met much more socialized with the dead Epstein was clear evidence of a committee on a fishing expedition. You know, they were just attempting to blemish reputations by association, no matter how tenuous that association happened to be. I do suspect, however, that they probably regretted dragging the wife of the past president to give evidence when she used her time there to give the committee a free law lesson on who they should be really deposing.
Donald Trump should be deposed by this committee?
Absolutely. You know, I was a lawyer, and as a lawyer, you would look for pattern and practice. If you were deposing a witness in a case that you were trying, if you were in court, what did you know about this person? What you knew could influence how you questioned that person, how you tried the case. Donald Trump has been held civilly liable for sexual assault by a jury of his peers. 9 members of a jury found him liable in the sexual assault of E. Jean Carroll. That is behavior. That fits a pattern if one were looking for a pattern. He has also been convicted on 34 felony counts for attempting to hide his relationship with an escort and then to commit business fraud to prevent it from becoming public in the 2016 campaign, which was ultimately election interference. So if I were running the committee or I were involved in this investigation, I would be looking for people who maybe had some prior conduct that might be relevant to either money or crimes. And yes, I think that it would be in keeping with the scope of the investigation of this committee to set up a deposition with President Trump. I know he's been deposed many, many, many times. He's taken the Fifth Amendment many, many hundreds of times. So I'm not saying you're going to get a lot of information. But given what's in the files and given past and prior conduct, he would be on my witness list.
See, what they forget is Hilary was a brilliant lawyer before she ever got. She was involved in the Nixon case. She was one of the lawyers who took down Nixon. So they thought to get the wee woman in, give her a bit of a grilling. She gutted them. Fair play to her. But it was, of course, Bill. Bill was the big because he was the guy who actually had befriended and travelled and vacationed with Epstein. It was him, not Hilary. Hilary didn't do it. And paradoxically, it was during his deposition that he ended up giving some cover to Trump. Because while Bill denied he had done anything wrong and swore he had never known about Epstein's crimes, he then went on to say that as far as he was concerned, he didn't think that Trump either had known about Epstein's crimes. This must have been wonderful news for the Donald. Though, I have to say this, to be honest, now, I have to say it is questionable how much weight such a declaration will carry coming from a man who is famous for having said
American
this.
People, I want you to listen to me. I'm going to say this again. I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. I never told anybody to lie, not a single time, never. These allegations are false, and I need to go back to work for the American people. Thank you.
That's still, there's not a man in the world that doesn't send shivers down your spine. Shivers down your spine. I heard a story. I know it's true. I do not know if this is true. This is the story I heard, okay? On the morning that it was going to be released that the blue dress, they'd done the DNA and they had discovered that it did belong to the Bill. Remember the famous dress? Well, the news was brought into the White House early in the morning. And Bill was woken with this horrific news that he's caught, he's done, he's caught. Give it up. So the story goes that he quietly went and knocked on Hilary's door and went in to give her the good news. So Hilary being Hilary, there's no screaming, no shouting, none of that stuff. When he had finished, she simply turned to him and said, "Okay, Bill, now go and explain that to your daughter." Oh. Talking about presidential wives, just when you thought things couldn't get any more surreal in the USA, we had the spectacle of First Lady Melania Trump chairing a meeting of the UN Security Council last Monday. I'm not making this shade up. I'm not making it up.
The 10,113 meeting of the Security Council is called to order. The provisional agenda for this meeting is maintenance of international peace and security, children, technology, and education in conflict.
I'd make a fair guess that was the first and only time the spouse of a US president has presided over a meeting of Security Council at the UN. Just as Melania's husband, President Trump, launched an attack on Iran, egged on by his real master, Israeli child murderer Benjamin Netanyahu. Now there was Melania squinting through false eyelashes which would blind a camel. And she said that the focus of the session, of course, was on education and children in conflict. Fair play to UN's Undersecretary General Rosemary DiCarlo, who stated the bloody obvious and said that the recent conflict in the Middle East is affecting children.
When conflicts erupt, children are among those most severely affected. We have been reminded of this truth over the last 2 days. Schools in Israel, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, and Oman have closed and moved to remote learning owing to the ongoing military operations in the region.
And one of the biggest effects could be maybe that the Israelis, one of the first slaughters and one of the first missile attacks hit a kid's school. We don't hear much about this. This happened in New York. Imagine if they bombed a school in London and killed 168 girls and their teachers. Can you imagine the news coverage we would be watching if that happened here and not in Iran? But hey, we've got through Gaza, so genocide and killing kids really doesn't feature in the news here anyway, so long as they're not white. Never in the history of the UN has it been held such disrespect. It's a farce, complete and utter farce. And then I thought, I just pondered for a moment, and I was thinking about Melania. God love her, like. God love Melania. And I had a bit of a change of mind, boys and girls, and I changed of mind. I did, I have a change of mind about her getting allowed to chair the UN Security Council meeting. For I suddenly remembered that this poor woman has earned the right to do so. I'll tell you why. You're asking me why. I'll tell you why. Consider the fact that that poor girl has had to endure the terror of being claimed upon by a bag of orange offal called Donald Trump. Like, hey, having to endure that abomination means she shouldn't only be allowed to chair the UN Security Council. She also deserves the Medal of Honor, a Purple Star, and the Presidential Medal of Freedom. For never, do you hear me? Never in the field of gaining a green card has any woman had to endure such utter horror. Horror. So like most of you, when this all kicked off, like everybody, we're all the same. We're all sitting watching the news. Can't believe we're just watching. Isn't it weird and surreal? You're watching the news about possibly the Third World War starting. And as I was doing there on Monday night, watching Newsnight, and as the USA and Israeli bombs were raining down in Iran. Jeremy Corbyn was interviewed, and when asked about the dangers of the illegal attacks, he went on to make the natural and obvious comparison with the continuing genocide being perpetrated by Israel in Gaza.
Ignoring totally any aspect of international law. Wouldn't it be wonderful if the UN would intervene at this point and get a ceasefire and then bring about some form of negotiations for the future? Or we're just going to witness the killing of thousands in Iran and now the spreading of that war all over the Middle East. This is the most perilous, dangerous moment for many decades in the whole region, even on top of the genocide against the Palestinian people over the past 2 years.
Going back to Mr. Corbyn's comments, Israel would deny that it has carried out a genocide in Gaza. Fred Fleiss, final thought to you.
Now, I have a lot of time for Victoria Derbyshire. She is a brilliant journalist who I admire and respect. And she, no doubt, was forced to do that following instructions in her ear from above, from a producer or an executive producer or whoever it was. She was forced to clarify that the Israeli government rejected claims that it had perpetrated a genocide in Gaza. But here's the thing. Again, I ask the question, why are the BBC acting as apologists for the IDF and the Netanyahu regime when international organizations such as Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and the world's leading association of genocide scholars have all accepted that what the IDF has done in Gaza constitutes genocide? The damage this is doing and has done to the BBC journalistic reputation is beyond repair, and its impartiality has been shredded and destroyed forever. The interesting question, which I've yet seen anybody to answer adequately, is why did America attack Iran? Now, that seems a pretty obvious question to ask. Now, we know that the whole motivation came from Netanyahu and the Israelis. He's been at this for over 20 years. He's been egging the USA for 20 years to attack Iran. But it wasn't until he got the useful fool of Trump until he was able to actually do it. But it's interesting just watching the Trump and the Trump and the administration and how often contradictory excuses have been appearing from Washington as to why they went to war. Here's the Donald
program and to continue developing long-range missiles that can now threaten our very good friends and allies in Europe, our troops stationed overseas, and could soon reach the American homeland.
But according to a U.S. Defense Intelligence report way back, well, no, it's only last 2025, the earliest date where Iran would have ballistic weapons able to reach America, the earliest date that could have happened was 2035, 9 years away. So that can't be the reason for the attacks. Now, Trump's next excuse was that Iran was about to develop, it's on the cusp, it was about to develop a nuclear weapon. Hold on here a second. Did Donald say that the US attack last June on Iran's nuclear sites had completely obliterated them?
So Iran wants to meet. As you know, their sites were obliterated. They're very evil nuclear sites. They were, now has been proven. We had some fake news for a little while. The same
So,
people.
Iran having ballistic missiles able to reach the US was a lie. And them having the ability to develop a nuclear bomb was a lie. What next? What could they say next? Oh, I know. What about regime change? Like, remember Trump had promised protesters in Iran when they rose up earlier in the year that he would support them to overthrow the mullahs. But he didn't do anything. And it cost thousands of innocent civilian Iranians their lives as the brutal regime let their dogs loose on them. Now, was he making up for this now? Was his lack of action at that time, was that what he was having the war for now? To make up for that?
Finally, to the great proud people of Iran, I say tonight that the hour of your freedom is at hand. Stay sheltered. Don't leave your home. It's very dangerous outside. Bombs will be dropping everywhere. When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. This will be probably your only chance for generations. For many years, you have asked for America's help, but you never got it. No president was willing to do what I am willing to do tonight. Now you have a president who is giving you what you want. So let's see how you respond. America is backing you with overwhelming strength and devastating force. Now is the time to seize control of your destiny and to unleash the prosperous and glorious future that is close within your reach.
But how long even this doesn't the narrative here doesn't work, because we subsequently had Secretary Hegseth saying it wasn't about regime change.
This is not a so-called regime change war, but the regime sure did change. And the world.
But regime change there has been. Having killed Ayatollah al-Khamenei, who did the US think was going to take his place? Now, surely, boys and girls, surely America had thought this through. They had thought out what was going to happen after they killed Ayatollah Khamenei. They're going to know which man they were going to put in his place and who was going to take over.
Do you have someone in mind right now? Because you said all the people you did have in mind have been taken out. What do you think?
Well, most of the people we had in mind are dead. So, we had some in mind from that group that is dead. And now we have another group. They may be dead also, based on reports. So I guess you have a third wave coming in. Pretty soon we're not going to know anybody.
No, I killed everybody. Killed her. Hey, I want to put your man. Oh, we killed him too. Ah, shit. What about his lieutenant? We killed him and his whole family. Ah, shit, it's a bit of a bummer, isn't it? They killed everybody. Everybody. This wiped out the whole top rank of Iran's government. Now, is it only me, or does this not sound horrifically similar to the utter balls up by the American regime after their invasion of Iraq, predicated again by Israel, who said that Saddam Hussein was right on the cusp of developing chemical weapons, which would, wait for this, guess what that was? That was a lie. A lie upon a lie upon a lie. Oh, well, then what about Libya? Libya, which they invaded to allow democracy to blossom, and which is now a basket case nation run by warring factions. So what is the reason? Why have the US decided to attack Iran, leaving aside the obvious need of man-child Trump for world attention? Plus, there's always Trump's infantile desire to project strength by using his army to murder and kill. Proved by some. You want proof of this? You want to hear proof? I watching during the week. Trump was releasing videos from the White House, which was mixing movie clips with real clips from US attacks in Iran to glorify the war. You could not make this shit up.
Wake up, Daddy's home.
Welcome home, son.
Strength and honor. Strength and honor.
What will you do without freedom?
Mavericks inbound.
You can't conceive of what I'm capable of!
Finishing this fight.
Yeah, I'm thinking I'm back.
I'm here to fight for truth and justice in the American way.
I am the danger.
Time to find out. Maximum effort.
Finish it. Here it comes. Now end this!
Flawless victory.
So it's not ballistic missiles hitting the US. It's not nuclear bombs coming from Iran. They say it's not about regime change because they've killed everybody. There's nobody to change to. What's the reason? Well, there's another much more terrifying explanation for the attack on Iran. And a clue to it came during the week when over 200 serving US military personnel complained that their commanders were using extreme Christian rhetoric to justify the war. One non-commissioned officer reported that his commander said the attack on Iran was all part of God's divine plan, referring to the book of Revelation. They love referring to the book of Revelation. See, when you hear anybody referring to the book of Revelation, I'm telling you it's time for the wee tablets and a nap. That's what I'm saying to you. But this guy, referring to the book of Revelation, he said that President Trump had been anointed by Jesus himself to light the signal fire in Iran to cause Armageddon and mark Christ's return to earth. I know. I know. It does sound a bit far-fetched. But this is what Tucker Carlson, this is Tucker Carlson here talking. He's speaking about his good friend and the present Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, and what old Pete had said during a visit he made to Jerusalem way back in 2018.
Now, here's a piece of tape you may have seen and that I personally don't want to play since I know the guy and I like him. But it does make you wonder. So this is the current Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, former Fox News employee. Nice man. Very nice man. 2018 in Jerusalem. And as someone who knew him well, I can tell you I had no idea that he had such evolved and specific and apparently very informed opinions on rebuilding the Third Temple, of all questions. This is not something they teach you in Sunday school in the Presbyterian Church. This is not something that people talk about at dinner in the United States. This is not something our Congress ever mentions, that the president ever talks about. This is considered so esoteric and weird and crypto-historical and religious and kind of culty and what's Chabad and that no one ever mentions it. But here's Pete Hegseth, football player from Princeton, going on about it in a way that suggests he's thought a lot about it. This is 2018.
Today, Jennifer and I and others had a chance to go see the Western Wall of the Temple Mount, the Western Wall tunnels, so much of the old city. And as you stand there, you can't help but behold the miracle before you. And it got me thinking about another miracle that I hope all of you don't see too far away. Because 1917 was a miracle, 1948 was a miracle, 1967 was a miracle, 2017, the declaration of Jerusalem as the capital was a miracle, and there's no reason why the miracle of the reestablishment of the temple on the Temple Mount is not possible. I don't know how it would happen, you don't know how it would happen, but I know that it could happen.
What is that? That's the Secretary of War right now overseeing the war with Iran that people fighting it are starting to say actually is about rebuilding this third temple. It's the same man. Okay, this is the point where you begin to think maybe we should have talked about this and its implications. And what are its implications? Religious war? Global.
Now, for you heathens who haven't read the Bible, Hegseth's reference to the third temple is more than interesting, as it is prophesied in the Bible that the building of the third temple will be a precursor to a messianic age and the final battle of Armageddon.
We're about to see the rapture! The rapture, I tell ye! We're going to be lifted into heaven! That's what's going to happen!
Well, I'm not and you're not. That's for damn sure. Staying on the religious theme, this week saw Donald once again welcome his spiritual advisors into the Oval Office to lay hands on him, lay hands on him. Give this man the spirit, Lord. Give this man the strength. And that's what they did. But being Donald, you know, Donald, he doesn't do things by half. Like, he doesn't have one or two in. He takes his pastors by abundance. Abundance.
We are honored to come before your presence today, lifting up the arms of our president. We pray for your continued blessing and favor to rest upon him. We pray for wisdom from heaven to flood his heart, his mind, and Lord, you will guide him in these challenging times that we're facing today. I pray for your grace and your protection over him. Yes. I pray for your grace and protection over our troops and all of our men and women serving in our armed forces. Yes. And Father, we just pray you'll continue to give our president the strength that he needs to lead our great nation as we come back to one nation under God, yes, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We pray your heavenly blessing upon him in Jesus' name. Amen.
No, it was a bit sad. Had to be the rest of them had to be a bit sad because one of their number from the last time they had them with the horns and the stuff, well, he couldn't be there. Texan mega church pastor Robert Morris, well, he wasn't able to attend this time, having been arrested and convicted of child abuse.
The founding pastor of Gateway Church in Southlake, as you see, being led away here in handcuffs, headed to jail after pleading guilty in his Oklahoma child sex abuse criminal case.
People with a great reputation, I have to say that. Great reputation. Pastors Robert Morris and Steve Dullen, they're great people. Great people with a great reputation, I have to say that. Great reputation.
One of the spiritual advisors who did make it to the Oval Office was, for the second time, was the lady at the front and centre with the red jacket on. Now, that's the famous Paula White, a woman whose prayer style, I do believe genuinely, has been influenced by the Teletubbies.
Orders of heaven, victory, 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 victory. For angels are being released right now. Angels are being dispatched right now. Hamanda aka ata raka deda baka sanda ata ambo osa kata rite eke banda ata rike didi ashada.
This is the world we live in. Laying the horns. Speak. None of this is new. You know, talk of miracles, talking in tongues, Armageddon and the return of Christ. There's nothing new in any of this. But up until the Trump administration, this would have been confined to the wards of mental health institutions rather than the White House. Sweet dreams. One positive in all the madness was the fact that after a shaky start, Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister, well, he discovered finally that he had a pair of balls and finally stood up to the old Donald and refused to just roll over and do what the Donald wanted him to do. And so the Donald did what Donald always does. He rants and threatens and shouts. Here's Donald's appraisal of Starmer.
By the way, I'm not happy with the UK either. This is not Winston Churchill that we're dealing with. By the way, I'm not happy.
The man's no Churchill. Well, Keir Starmer should take comfort in that observation. And he should also take comfort because of the comments of environmentalist and investigative journalist George Monbiot, who gave a concise and brilliant explanation as to why not being compared to Churchill, in relation to Iran at least, is a good thing. Here, Monbiot explains how the imperialistic intervention of Churchill and his aim to steal Iranian oil, aided as always by a big brother of the USA, well, it led directly to the subsequent brutal reign of the Ayatollahs.
Trump says he's no Winston Churchill. Well, in this respect, I'm very happy that he's no Winston Churchill, because Winston Churchill did intervene in Iran, and we are living with the consequences of that today. So Churchill and his counterparts in the US launched a coup against the democratically elected Prime Minister of Iran, Mohammad Mossadegh, in 1953, because he was nationalizing the oil industry. He said, this oil belongs to Iran, it shouldn't be all captured by the Anglo-Iranian oil company and siphoned out of our country and the wealth taken away from us. A perfectly reasonable position, but Churchill wasn't having any of that. He prompted the US, in particular the CIA, to launch a coup, overthrew Mossadegh, who was a highly popular leader. He was revered by his people to an extent that very few of ours ever are, and installed instead, reinstalled the Shah of Iran, Reza Pahlavi, with his brutal, cruel regime. And when that regime was overthrown in the Iranian Revolution in 1979, one of the main reasons that people gave for that new revolution was the overthrow of Mossadegh in 1953. So we are now living, or rather the Iranians are now living, with this brutal and horrible Ayatollah's regime, which was instituted in response to what the British and the Americans did before. This is what's called imperial blowback. And we think we're being so clever and so brilliant in wading in to countries about which our governments often seem to know very little, plunging in and firing missiles and staging coups and all the rest of it. But we don't think of those long-term outcomes, those long-term consequences, and the absolutely catastrophic effects that they can have many decades down the line.
Now Trump's anger wasn't confined just to the UK. He let rip at other European nations who refused to help him, especially Spain.
I think he's fantastic, but some of the European, like Spain, has been terrible. In fact, I told Scott to cut off all dealings with Spain. Spain, first of all, it started when every European nation, at my request, paid 5%, which they should be doing. And everybody was enthusiastic about it, Germany, everybody. And Spain didn't do it. And now Spain actually said that we can't use their bases, and that's all right. We could use their base if we want. We could just fly in and use it. Nobody's going to tell us not to use it, but we don't have to. But they were unfriendly, and so I told him we don't want to. Spain has absolutely nothing that we need other than great people. They have great people, but they don't have great leadership.
Surprisingly, a matter of days later, the White House announced that Spain, they had bowed to US pressure, and they were going to allow American planes to take off from Spain.
With respect to Spain, I think they heard the president's message yesterday loud and clear. And it's my understanding over the past several hours they've agreed to cooperate with the U.S. military. And so I know that the U.S. military is coordinating with their counterparts in Spain.
Will you hear that? Believe this or not, you'll not believe this considering everything I've said so far. This was a lie. This was another lie. A blatant lie, and something Spain was very quick to point out was a lie.
La portavoz de la Casa Blanca acaba de decir que España ha acordado cooperar con el ejército de Estados Unidos. ¿Esto es verdad?
Lo desmiento tajantemente. Según venía para acá, me han llegado esas declaraciones, he tenido tiempo de poderlas ver y oír un poco. Lo desmiento tajantemente, la posición del gobierno de España sobre la guerra en Oriente Medio y los bombardeos en Irán, sobre el uso de nuestras bases, no ha cambiado ni una coma.
¿La portavoz de la Casa Blanca está mintiendo?
Será la portavoz de la Casa Blanca, pero yo soy el ministro de Asuntos Exteriores del gobierno de España Y le digo que nuestra posición sobre el uso de las bases, sobre la guerra en Oriente Medio, sobre los bombardeos en relación a Irán, no ha cambiado en absoluto.
And so here we are, boys and girls. We have a war which could lead to the collapse of many nations as they run out of oil and gas due to Iran's closure of the Straits of Hormuz. Now, the true nightmare of the closure of that strait, well, it's explained here.
Iran's Revolutionary Guards Corps says the Strait of Hormuz is now closed. Now, this is an important waterway with about 20% of the world's oil consumption passing through this narrow curve. It's used by most of the major oil and gas producers in the Middle East. Well, the Strait of Hormuz is rather narrow but holds a lot of traffic. If we look at just this narrow point, it's about 33 kilometers, but an estimated 20 million barrels of oil have flowed through it every single day last year. Now, much of it is headed to Asia through the Arabian Sea, but some of it is also headed to Europe, right through the Arabian Sea and up through the Suez Canal. Its closure would mean 19 billion barrels of oil will be wiped off the global market. Now, Iran has been targeting energy infrastructure right across the region. It sent global oil and gas prices soaring.
And isn't it slightly amusing that after Trump's regular rants about the evils of wind farms,
Don't worry about wind. Forget it. It's worthless. You don't get approvals for wind. We don't do wind in this because it's a loser.
Well, before this war is over, he might end up having to rely on a wind farm to keep the lights on in the White House. Change gear, boys, change gear from the most serious of politics back to political pantomime in the shape of our already overpaid MLAs. I did a piece last week, and look it up, a piece last week, on the proposed obscene 27% pay rise for MLAs. At that time, last week, I did point out that you couldn't put a sheet of paper between all our parties, as for the first time ever in history, they all agreed. They agreed, oh yes, we deserve that money. Oh, I'll say, William, yes, what is it? Do we need that? Oh yes, well, we do, Sean. They agreed. You couldn't put a sheet of paper between them. Well, news, boys. The Shinners have blinked first. Yeah, under a barrage of public anger, they are now saying that the proposed wage rise increase would be excessive, considering what ordinary people are going through with the cost of living crisis. And there was a hilarious, I love this. The salary increase was raised during the week on BBC's The View. Now, and there was a superb example of getting caught out talking
utter shite
during an exchange between Mark Carruthers and the UUP's Steve Aiken. Now, Steve Aiken, for you who do not know, I call him Captain Pugwash. Captain Pugwash, because he was actually a captain of a submarine. Captain Pugwash is what I call out Steve. Well, he refused to answer a very simple question. He was asked about the pay rise. I'm on the committee. I'm on the committee. You don't know this here. Rather, Pugwash, and I watch him as he squirms rather than answer a very simple question about MLA pay.
Right. Steve Aiken, what's your view? I can't have a view because it's already been briefed to your team. I'm the chair of the Assembly Pension Trustees.
I'm just asking you as an MLA.
No, I can't. Mark, you know the issue.
Of course you can.
No, I can't. Because I am the chair of the Assembly Trustees.
But this is not about pensions.
Mark,
this is about salary.
That's it. You know the issue. Your producer's been briefed the issue, and
you're already on the record publicly because you posted on Facebook in a post that you subsequently took down that the teeny boppers in Alliance and Sinn Féin aren't worth the increase in pay. So you're already on the public record.
I've already made my statement.
But you are on the public record. So why did you take that post down?
But keep on going the way you want to go. I've told you, knock it out.
Yeah, but my point is that you're saying now that you can't comment. I'm saying you've already publicly commented. Let me read out what you said on Facebook. You said, there'll be a furore across the media and from the public. However, if we're to attract professional and experienced people to the Assembly, rather than professional political teeny boppers that populate the Alliance and Sinn Féin benches, we have to have suitable pay, allowances and work conditions. That is your position. I'm just asking you if it's Still
I've
your
told
position.
you, Mark, I've told you, I am sitting here tonight and bearing in mind where we are in these where we are in negotiations and where things are going at the moment. I am, sorry, just get this correct. I am the chair of the Assembly Pension
Well, you
Trustees.
presumably were the chair of the Assembly Pension Trustees when you posted that on Facebook.
I've given my answer.
And I'm baffled.
Well,
and I suspect our viewers will be baffled. Did
well,
you forget you chaired that whenever you posted that on Facebook?
You can be as baffled or whatever it is you want.
Well, I think the viewers might be baffled as well.
I don't think so, Mark.
Are you baffled,
It was
Claire
very
Hannah?
clear.
Oh, isn't that brilliant? Isn't that brilliant? That's superb. Oh, Carruthers, take a bow, take a bow. You could see Pugwash, can you, halfway through that, you could see the brain's a bit slow, like he's not too sharp as child, but you could see the wheels sort of turn. But I could almost see him revert back to his submarine days. I could almost see in his eyes, he really wanted to scream, dive, dive, dive. Ah. And then he had the goal. The same man who just made a dick of himself on television for the whole country to watch. He had the gall to snipe at what he called teeny bopper politicians.
Okay, Saoirse Eastwood, Steve Aiken doesn't want to say anything tonight. I've put on the public record what he's already put on the public record. I've reminded people. How do you feel about your colleagues in the Assembly being referred to as teeny boppers by Steve Aiken?
I'm just delighted that somebody thinks we're still young. I'm 40, so I'm delighted that somebody thinks that we're still young, and obviously that just reflects Alliance's enthusiasm and zest for life that we display in all legislatures throughout this place.
Teeny boppers as well.
Yeah, well,
laugh. And I don't find that funny. He's an example of the arrogance, ignorance, and incompetence, and probably incontinence of an aged population of what I would call interlopers, owl boys, who should long ago have retired. Forget about teeny boppers, owl boys who should have retired, gone to their wee cottages and disappeared, but smelt the money in the trough at the Assembly and instead decided to come up and stick their big fat snouts in that trough. So I speak as an old man, but give me a teeny bopper any day of the week compared to an arrogant old shite like him. Well, right, mate, we may be going into Third World War, maybe the end of the world, but I decided to end with a wee bit of good news. You've got a wee bit of good news. You got to laugh, boys and girls. You got to laugh. Don't laugh, you're going to cry. And the good news this week, my recommendation this week is for a brilliant stand-up comedian. My very, very good friend. If any of you have come to see any of my end-of-year shows over the last decade, all them, that's what they all are. They're all shows I've done over the years. And his picture appears in most of them. Where is he? That's him there. He's there. Where is he? That's him there. You can't really see that there. Where is he? Quite these ones over here. He's all in these ones. The brilliant comic, Terry McHugh. Terry McHugh is he's hitting out on his one-man show. And so Terry is on the road, and he's already sold out the Lyric Theatre in Belfast. That's sold out. All his shows are selling out. But this Friday night, he's down the Ards Peninsula. This Friday night, you can catch Terence, 13th of March, when he'll be appearing at the Portico Arts Centre. So get your tickets. A few tickets left there. Get your tickets. You're guaranteed to have a wee bit of a giggle and all this madness and all this depression and all this horror. What choice do we have but to laugh?
That's all, folks.